Bookroast. This is the very first wrap-up and TBR of 2018. Yay! I don't know why that matters. Woohoo! I'm sleep deprived. This might be weird. Books I read in December. First book that I finished in December was an audiobook, and that was Artemis. It's by Andy Weir. Who's having a stroke? I am. Artemis. Artemis is by the author who wrote The Martian, and The Martian is a book that I truly and dearly love. It was so funny. If you haven't read it yet, read it. If you watched the movie and you forgot about it somewhat, read it still. If you watched it recently, maybe not, because they're quite similar. Artemis is the second book by this author, and I was sort of hesitant going into it because sometimes when someone has like really successful book and they release that and then the second one to follow up is just because their name is out there and it gets like pitched, and the publishers are like, yeah, they're gonna buy your book because we know you got another book that was successful, and then sometimes it might not be as good. But actually I loved it. I was so pleasantly surprised. It's very different from The Martian, because Martian is about a guy who gets stranded in Mars, hence The Martian, and Artemis is about a colony on the moon named Artemis, and our main character is Jasmine, who is an amazing character. I love her so much. She's so sassy. She doesn't take crap from anyone, and it was written in such a pleasurable way that this is a book where there's like, you know, swear words and everything, and I feel like that for me just makes the speech seem very flowing, you know. It's like a real life conversation. When I was listening to this book, also by the way, the audiobook was spectacular. The woman who narrated it, and for some reason I don't really lean towards women narrators because I feel like sometimes it's a little bit over dramatic and it's not my kind of vibe, but the woman who narrated this book is some sort of wizard. Okay, it was so good. It definitely added to the story. Yeah, this is about a girl who moves to Artemis with her family when she's 6 years old, and she works with her father at the... her father is sort of like a mechanic on the moon. It's like a moon mechanic. She helps her father, but she's not happy with her status, and she wants to live in this like really posh area of Artemis, and she doesn't want to struggle, and she's like, she gets into some shady stuff, and that all turns into a massive adventure and like sort of like fight to survive kind of thing. And it is amazing. It was so funny. The characters were lovable. There was so much representation as well. The main characters of color, and there's like and it totally makes sense. That's I think why I loved it so much, because it's a colony on the moon. It's such a nice salad of different and unique people on the moon, because they all moved from different places of the Earth, you know, and Earth is still like a thing. There's like tourism is the biggest thing Artemis has going on for them. Anyway, it's very interesting. It has some economic stuff, it has some political stuff involved there, and it's just like, it's quite an easy read, even though it is a sci-fi, but it's not too far away from us because it's on the moon and the Earth is, you know, still okay. Basically, I just recommend this to everyone. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Next book that I finished in December was The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, or as I like to call him, Brandon Sanderson, because I always get confuzzled for some reason. This is a book about a world where there's a very distinct class system where some people believe that they are even almost genetically superior to other people, and this is following some misborn people who have specific abilities and powers. Essentially it's about a rebellion, but there's so much more to it, and it's again such a wonderfully written book. It's very simplistic, so even if you're you know, sort of afraid or intimidated by high fantasy, this is a brilliant book for you to start with. It was surprisingly not required of me to read like 200 pages of a high fantasy to finally be invested in it. I was invested in like 50 pages easily, and it was one of those books that was very, very hard for me to put down, and I'm so glad that I finally got to it. I cannot wait for the second one. This ended up being my top book overall that I read in 2016, and is like edging on maybe my favorite book, but I can't say that because I really need to reread The Name of the Wind, and The Name of the Wind is like my boy, but like it's close, so you know, that's as good as it gets for me from now on. Next one that I read was The Rift, and it's an Avatar comic collection. It was like with some notes from the creators and such on the sides, and this particular issue was following, I think it was more focused on Toph than any other member of the group. And I love Toph, but this one did not really compare to me to the Search, or maybe even The Promise. I can't really remember The Promise that much, but The Search is about Zuko's mother and the story behind that we all waited for, and it's like, I love that one. This one was a little bit of a... there was not much point to it. I suppose we got to see what Toph, one of the Toph's later love interests, and her relationship with her father, because that happens here. But overall it wasn't really a strong one for me. Of course it's Avatar, so I still loved it. It was just like, it was fun because I love Avatar so much. If you're not a massive Avatar fan, I think this would be extremely boring for someone who's not an Avatar. That's my opinion anyway. So this got 3 stars for me. I can't remember if it was like a lower end or like middle end of 3 stars, but, and again, it's because I'm such a huge fan of it. During December I also got myself a Kindle as a gift, and so now I'm sort of starting to read on that, and I read something that I was not expecting to read, nor did I intend to read it, but it was Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. Never got drawn to John Green's books either. They're all quite like sad, and they're very like, you know, high school sort of books. I just never thought that I'm gonna read one of them, but I read this one because it was really cheap on Amazon, and I was locked out of my apartment for a whole day one day. So I had a lot of time in a cafe and I just sat and read that book. I did want to read this because the main character suffers with OCD, and I heard great things that the OCD is represented really accurately because John Green suffers from it himself, and there was definitely some anxiety woven in there because OCD, it is an anxiety disorder, you know, so and I absolutely agree with those people who said that. I loved the book. I thought that the mental health was represented so well. I think it's one of the top ones that I've ever read in fiction. Not that I've read a lot, but in fiction it was very, very accurate. Like, scary, surprisingly accurate. I feel like John Green managed to put it in, to put the feeling of whirlpool of thoughts and just like spiraling down into that void of confusion and like conflict inside of yourself so well. Applaud him, basically, like, well done. As for the plot, I know this was sort of released to be almost like a thriller mystery kind of thing, and I think that is extremely misleading. There was really not much about that. It was mainly the mental health, which I am actually glad for, because that's what I to that book. But if you are, because it was sort of advertised as being this, like, this girl and her friend are chasing a reward for a missing person, and there's like, you know, the whole investigation. Like, I suppose there was a little bit in the background, but if you're going in there to expecting that, you'll probably be quite disappointed, because it's not a lot about that. There's a love story, and as well as I think is like a thing for John Green's books. I didn't mind it. It was actually quite well done. It wasn't on my nerves. It wasn't the main focus. It was nice. I actually thoroughly enjoyed it, and it really surprised me, and I'm glad that I read it. I still don't, I do think that it was because of my interest in this specific area that I really enjoyed it, so I don't think I will go for any of the books that he already published. Maybe something here will come up in the future, maybe. I thought that this book was great, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Now the next book I technically finished in 2018, but it was the first day of 2018, so I think I'm gonna talk about it here and then like briefly mention it in the January one, being like, I already spoke about this. And that is Vicious by Victoria Schwab, or V.E. Schwab, sorry, on this one. I don't know why she keeps changing her name. This is a book that is advertised as it's set for from the villain's perspective, or the main characters are all villainous. I don't know if I entirely wholeheartedly agree with that. I wouldn't say they're villains. They're definitely not heroes, and the morals are a bit questionable. And this book started extremely strong for me, and this has the usual short chapters of Victoria Schwab's writing, and the writing style was quite different from the Dark Shade of Magic series, but not worse at all. I actually maybe even prefer this. This is set in our world, so it's an urban fantasy, and it's more like a supernatural thing because it's about 2 friends who discover how to get certain powers, so it's sort of like an X-Men but like darker. It's not really like a team like X-Men, however, so I don't want to mislead you guys, but I found that it had like a lot of that kind of vibes. I love X-Men, so I really enjoyed this one. It started really strong and I kept wanting to read it, but then I paused and I read the Final Fantasy, and that was a mistake because it's a tough act to follow. I did finish it. It was a little bit slower at the end, I don't know why, but I think that is just my mindset. Because it was so recent, I haven't run it through Copilot yet, because nowadays I'm giving myself a few days to calm down and get my thoughts in order before I rate a book, because I found that if I rate it just after reading it, I always overrate it. I'll let you know in January what the rating was. It's not going to be a very low one, that's for sure. I definitely did enjoy this. It was interesting and it was dark. I really liked that there was a dog as well. There was a dog. One of the characters has a dog in here. And I love that. And that is everything that I read in December. The things that I'm gonna read in January, I'm gonna finish Sleeping Giants. I'm listening to the audiobook, and again, I highly recommend that one. It has like a full cast of people for this book, and I'm loving it. There's only one narrator for one person that I absolutely just like, it ruins it every single time, and I think once that character was introduced into the audiobooks, it just got like pushed downwards because I really don't like the voice actor. But this book was surprisingly good. I mean, I'm still reading, I'm still listening to it. I only have 40 minutes left though, so I can judge it from here now. I love this book so much. It's a sci-fi and it's really interesting one because it's all a little bit similar to Illuminate, I suppose, because it's all set from recordings. So there's this main person who is recording things, like audio recordings, and that's all we get. Whoever he interviews, that's all we get. There's no other input in the story, there's no like descriptions, nothing. It's just the interviews. And I love that! Boy, I really love no description books, is what I'm understanding here. Very high expectations for the end of that book, although I did get a little bit daydreamy at the end, so I'm not sure how that's gonna go. I'm technically also reading Nimona. I very slowly did that for a couple of months now. I'm trying to maybe just sit down and finish it. It's about a villain and a hero, but they're sort of like friends, and they're not actually villains and heroes. They're both a mixture of both. And a girl that's gonna be an apprentice to the villain, and she's a shapeshifter. It's a really fun and non-committal one. I wouldn't say that it's hooking me up that I can't stop, because I clearly can. It's just a fun read, and it has like short chapters, so whenever I need a little pick-me-up or I feel like it's too late to start reading another one in the night or something, then I'll pick up and read this one. But I do like it. I don't think it's amazing, but I do like it, so I'm reading this one as well. Now, at the point of me filming this today, later on today and tomorrow I am doing a 24-hour readathon, and I haven't set my TBR for that because I want to do it like sort of like in a moment type of thing. But I do know that I'm gonna read Gemini, because that's gonna be my first grab for the readathon. I don't know how long it's gonna take, maybe the whole 24 hours because I'm slow. But yeah, this is gonna be one of the reads. I absolutely adored Illuminate. I thought it was such a fun emotional roller coaster of a book. And it's time for me to get the second one because the third one is coming in March, so it's nicely separated because I read it in 2016, Illuminate, but Logan then read Gemini and said that it's very similar, although a lot of people said afterwards that it's not similar, so I don't know. I waited enough for my Illuminate knowledge to sort of dull in my memory, you know, so I'm not remembering everything. And now I think it's a good time, and I've been craving this book, so I'ma do it. And the next book that I know for sure that I have to read in January is The Miniaturist, because this is the book of the quarter for the quarterly book club. Yeah, the live stream for this book is gonna be the 26th of January, so I will, once I'm done with the readathon, I think this is gonna be something that I'm gonna crack onto. I haven't been feeling like reading it for some reason because I'm such a mood reader. It's a hard life, but hopefully once I start I will just get into it. This is a book about, this is a magical realism book. It's about this girl who moves into a house, and I suppose she notices that there's some weird stuff going on in it with some miniature stuff. I clearly don't know about it a lot. I don't really actually want to know a lot because I feel like if I look it up, there's gonna be spoilers somewhere. I do know that there is a show, a TV show now for this book, so it's like an extra push for me because I love watching adaptations, and I almost forgot, right? January is actually a book in the jar month, so as well as all of these things that I mentioned, we're also reading The Slaughterhouse. I think my book arrived today. I'm gonna go to the post and pick that up. But yeah, Slaughterhouse 5 is the book that we're reading. It's super short, but it's the theme for the pick was banned book, and you guys voted for that one, so this is the one that we're reading today. Not today, this month. Oh my god, okay. So I hope you join me. If you don't know what Book in a Jar is, I will suggest the video that explains it right here somewhere. It's a book club, come join us. And I don't know if I'm gonna read anything else, so I'm simply leaving it at that. I think that's enough for me to get going. Let me know what was your favorite book that you read in December, and let me know what's something that you desperately want to read in January. I'm looking forward to your comments. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye!